In today's video, we're going to go over some strategies on how we can use mental math to add numbers. So we're going to be looking at double-digit addition today, and the two strategies we're going to focus on for mental math is breaking apart the numbers and then trying to make friendly numbers or groups of 10. So when I break apart the numbers, we're going to start with that first. There's two ways that I can do that. So I'm going to draw a line down the middle. And I'm going to show you two different ways that we can break apart a number. So if I'm looking at this first number sentence, 36 plus 23, one way that I can break apart these numbers is by splitting them into their tens and their ones. So if I look at 36, I'm going to see that there's a 3 in the tens place. So I know that that 3 really represents that that's 30. So 36 turns into 30 plus 6, and 23 becomes 20 plus 3. Now from there, I can then add my groups of 10. So I know that 20 plus 30 is 50. And then I can look at my ones and add those. 6 plus 3 is 9. So then I add that together, my groups of 10s together and my ones together. 50 plus 9 is 59. So that's one way that I can use mental math and by breaking it apart into my 10s and ones. First adding my 10s, then my ones, and then putting them together. Another way to break them apart is by just breaking apart one of the numbers to make it easier. So I might keep the larger number because usually when you're adding or using things like counting on or breaking apart, you would start with that bigger number and keep that the same. That way you don't have as much to add on. So I'm going to keep my larger number, which is 36 in this case. So I'm not going to break apart that number. I'm just going to keep it the same. Then I'm going to break apart the 23. And I'm going to break it apart just like I did with the other way of breaking it apart. So that's going to turn into, instead of 23, it'll be a 20 plus 3. Then I'm going to take those and I'm going to add them one at a time. So I'm going to take 36 plus 20, which I know is 56. Knowing that just my tens place is going to change. And since we know that that identity property of adding 0 to the ones place would mean it stays the same. So 36 plus 20 is 56. Then I still have the ones place or the 3 that I need to add. So 56 plus 3, I know is 59. So I broke apart that number sentence in two different ways. I can either break both numbers apart into the tens and the ones and then add them, or I can choose the smaller number to break apart and add the tens to the first number and then adding on the ones. So either way, it breaks apart those numbers and it makes it a lot easier for me to do that all in my head. I didn't have to get out manipulatives and I didn't have to draw a picture. I really didn't even have to count on, although that could be something that you could use with that. But that's meant to make it a lot easier. Another strategy we can use with using mental math is trying to break apart these numbers to make friendly numbers or groups of 10. So what I like to do with this strategy is I like to look at one number or the other and see which one might be closest to 10 and see if I can borrow some from the other number to make a 10. So for example, in this example of 36 plus 23, 36 is going to be closer to a group of 10. So I know that if I have 6 in the ones place, in order to get to the next 10, I'm going to need 4 more. So I'm going to break apart this 23, and I'm going to take 4 away from it so that I can make that 36 into a group of 10. So if I take this 4 away from the 23 and add it to the 36, then I know that I will have 40. So I have a nice even number, a group of 10. Now I need to figure out how much I have left. So if I have 23 and I took 4 away, I know that 4 less would be 19. So now I turned it into 40 plus 19. And because that first number is now a nice group of 10, that makes it a lot easier to add in my head. I can just add that to the tens place. So I know that I have 59. So that's another example of how you can break apart those numbers to make it easier to add in your head or through mental math. Let's look at another example, and this time I want you to pause the video and get a whiteboard and marker to try these different strategies with me. Now that you have your materials, let's take a look at those different strategies again, and this time I want you to pause the video each time before I complete it and try and complete it on your own. Then we can walk through those steps together. So the first way we talked about was that we could break apart both of the numbers into tens and ones. This is often my go-to strategy because it's the easiest for me. It may not be for you, but we're going to try it all together. So let's pause and think about how you would break apart these numbers into tens and ones. Now that you've broken yours apart into tens and ones, let's see how I would do it. So we're going to take our first number. I see that there's one group of 10, which is just 10. And then the ones is 7. Then in 42, I have 40 plus 2. That's that expanded form that we learned about already. So then the next step would be to add the tens separately. So add those tens now and see if it matches mine. I know 10 plus 40 is going to be 50. And then next we add the ones. So 7 plus 2 is 9. So now we have 50 plus 9, which is 59. Let's try this in the other way of breaking apart, where we just break apart one number into tens and ones. So looking at this one, 17 plus 42, we're going to break apart the smaller number because that's going to be more efficient. So think about which number is smaller or less and break apart that number. Now that you have yours, I know that 17 is a smaller number. So I'm going to keep 42 how it is, and I'm going to break apart 17 into 10 plus 7. So now I have 42 plus 10 plus 7. I'm going to take the first part of that, and we know using the associative property that I can add in any order and I will still have the same sum. So 42 plus 10, we would add that first. Go ahead and do that with me, which would be 52. Then we still have our ones left. So I'd add 52 plus 7, which would be 59. So both of those ways of breaking apart into tens and ones still get us to 59. It would just be a matter of if you want to break apart both numbers in tens and ones or just one number into tens and ones. We had one more strategy that I want us to practice together as we model this together, and that was making friendly numbers and groups of 10. So looking at these two numbers, 17 and 42, I would think about which number is closest to make a group of 10 that I can break apart. So I'm looking at 17 is closer to the next group of 10 than 42. So I could keep 17 and borrow from the 42. Or I could do the other way around, whatever makes sense to you. I could also borrow from the 17 and give it to the 42. So I know that in order to make the next group of 10 for 42, if I choose to try and make that one into a group of 10, I'm going to need 8 more. So I'm going to take 8 from the 17, which means that I would have 9 left. I'm going to take that 8 and I'm going to put it with my 42 to make the next group of 10. So 8 plus 42 is 50. Then I just have that 9 left. So 50 plus 9 is 59. Again, when you are using mental math, you can choose between any of these 3 ways to do that, whichever one makes most sense to you. So if there's one that's confusing to you, that's not the one that makes the most sense, then that's okay. You don't necessarily have to use it. I just want you to have all of these tools available to you that you could possibly practice and possibly use. The more strategies, the better. Let's do one final example. And this time, I want you to choose how you would use mental math to help you. So you could choose to break both numbers apart into tens and ones, one number into tens and ones, or you could borrow from one or the other to make 10. Pause the video now and complete one of those strategies, and then you can press play when you're ready to check. Now that you've tried it on your own, let's take a look at the different strategies. Now, one of the strategies that really stands out to me in this one is making a 10. And this one works out really well with the ones in both of these numbers that I can easily borrow from one or the other and make a group of 10. So I know already that 6 and 4 go together to make 10. So if I want to borrow, there we go, zoom back out. If I want to borrow from one or the other, I can take those ones and I can make a group of 10. So I'm going to make 24. I'm going to borrow the 4 to make it into a 20 and a 4. So now I have 66 plus 4, and that makes 70. So it's an easy group of 10 to add. And then I still have the 20 left. So I do 70 plus 20, which is 90. If you chose to do one of the other strategies, let's take a look at the other strategies. I could break apart both of them into tens and ones. So 66 becomes 60 plus 6, and 24 becomes 20 plus 4. 60 and 20 is 80. 6 plus 4 is 10. 80 plus 10 is 90. One last strategy that you might have used that we've gone over today would be breaking apart one number. Remember, I would break apart the smallest number. That's going to be more efficient. So I'm going to keep 66 the same. Then I'm going to break apart 24 into 20 plus 4. I would add those numbers together, 66 plus 20 is going to be 86. Then I still have the 4, so 86 plus 4 equals 90. So all 3 of those strategies tell me that it's 90. all 3 of those I was using mental math and didn't have to count on or use a picture or anything like that. I can do it easily in my head by breaking apart those numbers and kind of trading around to make those workable and easy for me in my head. So as you're working today, you're going to be using those strategies. Now it does look a little bit overwhelming at first, but if we take a look at up at the top, it's telling you to use break apart. So what it did for you on 1, 2, and 3 is it already broke apart some of them for you. So it's having you fill in those missing numbers. So for example, this first one says 53 plus 34, and 34 equals 30 plus blank. So it's taking 34 and it's showing you that step of what that is, breaking it apart. Then you have to think about which part would I add to 53 that would get me to 83. Am I adding the tens or am I adding the ones? And then what am I adding on next? So it has those steps listed out for you. You're just figuring out which ones of those are there. Then looking at 4, 5, and 6, it's having you use the strategy of making 10. So just thinking about which one it's asking you to use. It does ask you specifically for those certain ones that you need to do just to get you some practice. But when you go down to the bottom of number 7 through 14, you can choose which strategy you'd like to use for mental math. And if you need to use a whiteboard or the back of the paper to do your thinking, that's fine too. If you need to do the steps out like this, but hopefully you'll be able to think through those, and truly mental math should just be in your head. So use the strategy that works best for you during those.